Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to welcome you to the first AYAC election forum. We are being joined by the Liberals for the first one. But first, before we start, I would like to do a quick acknowledgement of country and pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We also acknowledge the traditional owners of country from where you are joining us today. My name is Sarah Montanis. I'm the co-chair of the Australian Youth Affairs Coalition. We're the national voice and advocate for more than 4.5 million young people right across the country. We're hosting these events with representatives from major parties so you can hear about what they will do for young people and ask questions before you vote. We're joined by Auslan interpreter at this event, who you can see on your screen. And if you need help or support during the event, you can use the chat and one of our team members will help you out. We are joined tonight by Assistant Minister Luke Howarth for the Liberal National Party. Luke is the member of Petrie in Queensland and was first elected in 2013 as a member of the Liberal National Party. Luke is currently the Assistant Minister for Youth and Employment Services. We're really excited to have you here, Minister, and I want to thank you for your support. We're going to take questions from the audience in just a moment, but before we start, Minister, we'd like you to share why you believe young people should vote for the coalition at this election.
Yeah, look, thanks very much. It's wonderful to be here tonight, and thank you to Luke and Reese and all the team at the Australian Youth Affairs Coalition for hosting, and thank you for the acknowledgement of country tonight too as well, Sarah. Australian Youth Affairs Coalition has played a valuable role in facilitating engagement between young people and the Australian government, including our youth roundtables recently. And I really want to thank you for that. It's been a strong part of our national youth advocacy network and fellowship program. So thank you for what you've been doing there. I've worked with AYAC and the coalition government for the last sort of 12 months, 18 months since I've been in this role as Assistant Minister for Youth and Employment Services, and I've really enjoyed that. Of course, the election is on, and this Saturday everyone will have the right to vote. Everyone is over 18, and you have the opportunity to shape our nation this Saturday. Before Saturday, I strongly encourage you to think about the choice that you have for Australia's future, a choice between the coalition government, who has demonstrated strong economic management that has allowed us to pay for important services such as Medicare, our housing guarantee scheme, employment programs, apprenticeships, reducing the student contribution for university degrees in areas of employment growth, and measures that have eased the cost of living, and a choice between Labor and Anthony Albanese, who I believe who have shown time and time again that they don't understand how to manage the economy in order to pay for the essential services Australians need. There's over 3.2 million young people in Australia who are doing brilliant things every day. And the coalition government has been supporting all of you to reach your potential. We want to see you do your very best, everything that you do. The coalition government has navigated Australia through one of the biggest crises that we've seen in our lifetimes, and no doubt yours, and have emerged with a strong economy, with strong jobs growth and a strong future. This includes in supporting young Australians to stay in and gain employment in the most trying of circumstances. The Morrison government knows that young people have enormous potential to support this, and that's why we established Australia's Youth Policy Framework, which I've got with me here, to better ensure that your voices as young Australians are heard by people like me and other people that make public policy. We've supported young Australians with their goal of owning their first home as well, by more than doubling our home guarantee scheme to make available up to 50,000 places each year, including a new regional home guarantee open to non-first home buyers. And we've provided direct and immediate cost of living relief by halving the fuel excess rate for 6 months, so young people, households and small businesses can better manage the spike in fuel prices driven by the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And we've delivered structural reform and real change in mental health and suicide prevention through our nearly $3 billion investment in mental health and suicide prevention plan, which includes almost $1 billion of investment directly for young people. We've supported young people's education with record funding for schools in all sectors, an estimated $318.9 billion in 10 years, and $20 billion for higher education in the 22-23 financial year alone. And we are investing a record $7.8 billion this year to deliver generation skilling across the nation, with a heavy focus on supporting apprenticeships and traineeships. And I'm also really pleased to announce tonight that the Morrison government will provide up to $400,000 to the Australian Youth Affairs Coalition, congratulations, to support the continuation of a range of youth engagement, research and coordination activities. You can continue to participate in the development of the youth engagement strategy, establish a reference group of young people to engage with government, continue supporting the Morrison government's youth roundtables that I've been running over the last 12 months, conduct regular research with young people to understand their experiences and develop findings in partnership with government and research organisations, continue the AYAC fellowship program, and of course, this demonstrates our commitment as a government to continuous commitment to listening and delivering for Australia's youth on the issues that matter to them. So on May 21, you have a real choice this weekend. I urge you to choose a side that has a strong economic plan, that believes that you have a positive future, that won't talk negativity to you all the time, like we often hear from the Greens and the Labor Party. And I congratulate all of you for being part of tonight's forum, and I look forward to answering your questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going to introduce another Luke tonight, who is from the AYAC team and will share some of the questions that have been sent in for the audience. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Assistant Minister. We really appreciate the support and that announcement of funding for Australian Youth Affairs Coalition as National Peak Body for Young People. We're actually really, really excited and look forward to working together and make sure that young people can work directly with government, with yourself, and lead policy making on the issues that matter to them. So thank you again for all of your support. We're really looking forward to that. It's really great to have you here. We've got a lot of questions from the audience, and we've also got some questions that people have given when they've signed up to attend tonight. So for anyone watching, you can use the Q&A link in the toolbar to ask your questions, or you can pop your questions in the chat and we'll share them with the Minister throughout the evening. But first, we've had a few questions come in, or probably more than a few, from people who have registered tonight. And we're going to start with the first one on cost of living. In our recent poll, where we asked more than 500 young people right across the country, what is the most important thing that matters to you when you go to the polling booth this Saturday? Cost of living was number one. And so our first question is, what will your party do to address cost of living increases for young people?
Well, thanks very much, Luke. There's a number of things that we're doing to address cost of living. The Morrison government is obviously supporting some 3.2 million young Australians through record investments to make the transition from youth to adulthood a little easier, with support targeted to those most in need. Our new cost of living measures in the recent budget, Luke, are responsible and targeted. They deliver cheaper fuel and cheaper medicines, which may not be appropriate for all young people tending to have better health, and putting more money in the pockets of millions of Australians. We've responded with the increased cost of living pressures with a new temporary, targeted and responsible measures as part of our plan for a stronger future. They include, everyone would know, cutting fuel excise in half for the next 6 months, saving Australians 22 cents a litre every time they fill up their vehicle. We think that this will really help. There's a one-off $420 cost of living tax offset for more than 10 million low and middle income earners. Individuals receiving the low and middle income tax offset will now receive anywhere from $675 up to $1,500. So depending on what you earn, if you're earning $50,000 or so, or around that level, you'll get the full $1,500. If you're just creeping over the tax-free threshold of, as you know, $18,200, you get completely tax-free. If you're just creeping over that, then the minimum you'll get sort of $675. So that is really important. And obviously, if you're a couple, you can get up to $3,000. So the other thing we're doing is cutting tax too, to reward overtime and to reward your hard work. So this will be particularly important for younger people that are perhaps finished university and are engaged full-time in work, because, as I said before, 18,200 you earn tax-free, and then from 18,200 up to 45,000 you earn 19, or you pay 19 cents on the dollar. But the coalition is cutting tax above that to 30 cents flat, all the way up to 200,000. So if you want to start your own business one day, or you want to, earn higher amounts through overtime or commission or whatever it is that you do, at the moment, the more you earn, you go into a higher tax bracket. It could be 37 cents in the dollar. So cutting it 30 cents, it will be really beneficial to all Australians. Over that, it'll still be 45 cents in the dollar. So, look, youth unemployment's dropped to 8.3%. There's more work to do, but there's some of the ways we're cutting cost of living.
Thanks, Minister. After cost of living, the second most prominent issue for young people was climate change. Climate change repeatedly features as one of the most forefront concerns amongst young people, and we are fatigued by catchphrases and want to see concrete, bold steps taken. How can we be sure that a coalition government will actually take meaningful action on climate change?
Well, because we believe in climate change and we want to reduce emissions. That's the first thing. I mean, if you listen to Labor and the Greens, all they do is talk down the coalition government and talk about negativity, how Australia is not acting on climate change, when the truth of the matter is we're actually doing a lot. And all young people in Australia can be proud of what we've done. Let me list some facts. Our emissions are already 20% lower right now today than in 2005. So for some youth that weren't even born in 2005, if they're 15 years of age, the emissions now are lower than what they were then. And they're lower than any year under the previous government. We're also on track to beat our strong target, our 2030 Paris Agreement. So when the United States pulled out of the Paris Agreement, Australia stayed in it under the leadership of the Liberal National Government. You didn't see us pull out. We were committed to it. Why? Because we believe in climate change. People like myself, as your Assistant Minister for Youth, love the environment and want to make sure that we leave a healthy generation for all our youth, including my own three sons that are 20, 18 and 15, all in that youth category. With our latest projections, with that 2030 target, we have a target to reduce emissions by 28%, but our target, we believe, will actually show us hitting a projection of 30 to 35%. That's 8 years from now. Since 2005, Australia has reduced our emissions more quickly than Canada, Japan and New Zealand. There's just 3 countries as well as others. And Australia has a strong record of meeting our targets. So when we talk about targets, Australia has met every previous target that we've set. And a good example of that is having beaten the 2020 Kyoto target by 459 million tonnes. So when you hear the Greens and Labor talk about carbon credits and somehow the coalition government is cheating by relying on carbon credits, what they're actually saying is we have carbon credits because we beat our 2020 target by 459 million tonnes. Now, the Minister believes that we won't even have to use those credits, that we'll hit our goal and actually achieve it, as I said before, up to 30 or 35% by 2030. Now, let's not forget as well that the Morrison government has signed up to net zero emissions by 2050. That is a big step and it's a commitment for Australia. But what do we see from other parties now? Now they say, oh, that's not good enough. Yet at the last election, that was their target. So if you're looking for a party that will always outbid one another, that won't be us. Because I guarantee you, whatever we do, the Greens and the Labor will just keep bidding higher and higher, because the policy of the Greens at the last election was net zero by 2050. And now the coalition Morrison government has signed up to that, and we're going to do that. That is very important. So we have 28 years to get that done. There's obviously a lot of technology that will change in that time. We're obviously investing a lot in renewables. And we've got a proven plan. We've got a technology-driven long-term emissions reduction plan. And it sets out a credible pathway to net zero by 2050. without taxing all of you as well to get there. So we're not bringing in a carbon tax like we saw previously or anything like that, but we're preserving our existing industries. So we're not putting everyone out of jobs at the moment, which is why our 2030 target is a 28% reduction. And we're establishing Australia as a leader in low emissions technologies and positioning our regions to prosper. This decade, the government will invest more than $22 billion this decade in low emissions technologies, driving over $88 billion of total investment to reduce emissions. And our approach to reducing emissions has been effective. Australia's emissions are more than 100 million tonnes lower today than when Labor said they would be under Labor's last carbon tax. So if you think about that, when the carbon tax was introduced, and some of you would have only been young, the emissions are way lower than that.
Thanks, Minister. I might jump in there, Minister, because we've got a few questions coming in and the chat's going on. Yeah. Absolutely love, but I appreciate it. I know that, for a lot of young people on our survey, climate change is going to be a huge issue when they go to the voting poll.
But Luke, the key point that I want to make here is that political parties will tell every young person that we're not doing anything and that Australia isn't performing. The reality is we are actually doing a lot. Young people can talk to their MPs, they can talk to me as Assistant Minister. We'll continue to listen. I mean, I live in this country too, and so do my 3 sons, and I want a climate that's safe and an Australia that has a positive future, and I want that for all young people too.
Yeah, thanks, Minister. And for any young people watching, you can go to our website now and we'll help you go and chat to your local minister or your local member. A couple of days left before election, but there's still time. Minister, this next question is about housing. Obviously, there's been an announcement over the weekend, but can you tell us about your plans for resolving the housing crisis, where a lot of young people are being priced out of being able to purchase a home, and your plans to make rental and generally purchasing a property more affordable for young people?
Yeah, look, sure. Look, I've had a bit of work in this space myself. After the last election, I was appointed as Assistant Minister for Community Housing, Homelessness and Community Services, and I work closely with state governments who have prime responsibility here. When I looked at the last census and homelessness and how to reduce it, the 3 growing areas of homelessness was not rough sleeping, but it was couch surfing, it was overcrowding, and it was women and children escaping domestic violence. And those were 3 areas that I wanted to help reduce. We had some good agreements, including myself working with the Queensland Labor government to send all boarding houses a letter about how they can improve their accommodation so people go from being classed as homeless to housed. And so these are really important practical steps. And I know our Minister for Indigenous Australians, the Honourable Ken Wyatt, has also done a lot of work with states on overcrowding. And so I want to mention that. But obviously, we have a $1.6 billion fund for the states with a National Housing and Homelessness Agreement to build more public housing. That's the first thing. We also put $5.5 billion into Commonwealth rent assistance to help people that are renting to be able to afford their rent on top of any payments that they might receive, whether that's job seeker or whether it's the pension if you're in your older age. We also have the NIFIC scheme, which helps community housing providers to get cheap finance to build more accommodation, and then they cap that at 30% plus Commonwealth rent assistance. And our Minister, Michael Sukkar, has done a lot of work with NIFIC, not so much in my state because the state hasn't embraced it as much, but particularly in New South Wales, that's been good. So you've got public housing support, you've got Commonwealth rent assistance in the private sector, you've got NIFIC through community housing providers. And then, of course, the supply side of it, a lot of that is left with states and councils. If you buy a block of land in Queensland, 1/3 almost of the price of the block of land is spent on state and council fees. So if you buy a block of land for 450 grand, the developers shelled out 150 thanks to state governments and council fees. But we have 220,000 Australians in apprenticeships now to help get the builders, the carpenters, the brickies, and everyone else we need to build the supply as well. We also, of course, I did Safe Places when I was working in that homelessness area, 60 million in new housing to provide safe places for women and children escaping DV. But The coalition government wants people to buy their own home, and we're backing that up by helping young people to be able to do that. For every young person watching, I don't want you to be able to rent your whole life. I want to be able to see you buy your own home. And there are a number of policies that we're doing. We're not just cutting your tax, so once you're working, you're getting a lower tax rate, but we're doing things like the First Home Super Saver Scheme. That's absolute winner. Doesn't matter necessarily what you earn. It works particularly well if you're earning over 45,000. But at the moment, if you save in a bank and you're earning over 45,000, you lose 32.5% in tax. We're giving you a 17.5% tax rate cut if you save in super through the First Home Super Saver Scheme. As you know, we also announced a new scheme yesterday where you can use super as part of a deposit for a home loan. But for young people, many of you won't have super if you've been at school and then you're studying at uni and so forth, not until you're working full time. So that's another point. The home guarantee scheme is really good, where people can get in on a 5% deposit and we pay the mortgage insurance. And if you're a single parent, same thing can be done with a 2% deposit where you can get in as well. So there's some of the things we're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we've actually had quite a few questions in the chat specifically about housing. The first one is actually on the home guarantee scheme. And there's been a lot of talk in the media today about the scheme and its applicability and how it might work, and some criticisms about young people taking money out of super to put it into a house or another type of assets. The question specifically is what makes the Morrison government think it will now work after criticism? And then we have a few follow-up questions around homelessness. One specifically about raising the Commonwealth rent assistance, and another about a possible housing strategy to end youth homelessness. So I've given you three there, sorry.
All right, well, three. First of all, don't be fooled by the opposition to not wanting you to use your super to buy a home. Labor are heavily invested here. They're ideologically opposed to you using your own money in super. They're tied up with the industry super funds. They've got this idea that it's their money. It's not, it's your money. And they voted against Labor. I'm not sure about the Greens, so I won't comment. They voted against the First Home Super Saver Scheme. That's an absolute winner. Now, why do I think super is good to use your housing? Because right now, if you're an investor or if you've got a self-managed super fund like I have, because all those political pensions are gone, I don't get that, trust me. I had a self-managed super fund before I came into Parliament, running my own small family business. But you can invest in property right now. I've got a house in super that I rent out in a low-income area in my own area, and that is available. But what's ridiculous is that you can't buy your own home with it. The reality is that if you had a home in the last 2 years and you used part of your super, where do you think you would have made more money in your super? Through investing in your own home or in shares? I can tell you in property, and property continues to go up long term. Yes, it can fall short term, but I'm 49. I turned 50 this year. In my time, all I've done is seen it go up. So I would encourage you to not believe the hype and the negativity from the opposition on this, but to invest in that. With Commonwealth rent assistance, Luke, at the moment, it's not tipped to rise. It is set where it is. I can't come here and say the government is looking to increase it at the moment. It is where it is. With homelessness, what was the other question? Sorry, Luke.
So there was a specific question here around creating a national plan to address the youth homelessness crisis. And as you said, often the biggest increase among the homeless population is young people under 25. And it's really a group that requires some specific support from the whole community.
Look, the reality is when I was in the role, and now Minister Sukk's in that role, but when I was in the role, I met with every housing minister at every state level, and I worked closely, like I did with Mick de Brenni, who was the housing minister at the time in Queensland. So if you want to reduce homelessness, you've got to work together. Obviously, the Prime Minister set up the National Cabinet and has got all the premiers. Now, I don't know if that'll continue in the future, but that would be an ideal way to do it. The reality is, with homelessness for youth, it's mainly around couch surfing, okay, and overcrowding in the cities where you'll get a 3-bedroom home and 10 or 15 people living in there to save rent. With couch surfing, we have the Reconnect program to help young people reconnect with their parents. And with overcrowding, at the end of the day, yeah, that is homelessness. And that's why we're trying to get more people into well-paying jobs so they can, first of all, get their own place, but also buy their own place. And once again, this super option is a good option because you put the money back into super when you sell it. No one lives in their house for 40 years. My grandparents might have, but most people now buy and sell houses every 10 to 15 years. So if you buy a house in super and you sell it in 15 years and make a good capital gain, you can put that money back into super plus a percentage of the capital gain as well.
Thanks, Minister. We could probably talk about tax all night, but I think we'll annoy the audience potentially.
Yeah.
I want to hand over to Sarah, who has a question about mental health.
Thanks, Minister. Just based off some research that I've done personally, homelessness always stems from a root of mental health issues. So what will the Coalition be doing to address the mental health pandemic and increase access to mental health services?
Yeah, look, Sarah, thank you very much. Mental health is a very important issue to young people, and it's an issue that we need to talk about. You know, when I was growing up, we never spoke about mental health. It was not the done thing to do. But, you know, I've met plenty of young people that have been to Headspace, that have been to see their psychologist, whatever it is, and that's great. They're talking about what they need to in order to get the help they need, and there's no longer any stigma attached to that whatsoever. So mental health is very important. I might read some notes, Sarah, that I have here, given I'm not the minister in this space, but obviously the Morrison government knows that COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the mental health and wellbeing of people. The transition from youth to adulthood, from education to employment and independence is a challenging time, especially with the disruptions of the last couple of years. That's why we're backing young people by investing ways to transition easier. And we've made mental health and suicide prevention a national priority and are delivering landmark reform to ensure all Australians, including children and young people, have access to the support they need when and where they need it. And the Morrison government's National Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Plan, it's a total of $3 billion. It was announced in the 21 and 22 budget, and it represents the single largest Commonwealth investment in mental health and suicide prevention in Australia's history. So when you talk about mental health investment and funding, it's never, ever been higher, except under this Liberal National Party government. And so a record $2.3 billion in the 2021-22 budget and a further $650 million in this year's budget. And this plan includes a strong focus on ensuring children and young people get the mental health care they need by establishing a network of mental health centres. And I won't go into all of it, but we're doing things like Kids Helpline, continuing the rollout of the new world-class digital platform under Head to Head that provides online professional counselling, peer support, clinical support and referrals, and helping young people get jobs or stay in education. And in relation to headspaces, when we came to government, there was 56 in Australia. There's now 164. So we've tripled the amount of headspaces throughout Australia, including one of my own electorate up here in Petrie in Queensland. And we've also launched the world's first child mental health and wellbeing strategy for children and back this up with some additional hundreds of millions of dollars investment there too. Obviously, David Coleman is our Assistant Minister in this space, and I did do a roundtable with AYAC in this time. And we've also seen Senator Ann Ruston, who's our Social Services Minister, and if the Coalition government has returned, will be our Health Minister, also invest in a number of youth organisations around the country to help with mental health, but also with employment and other issues that young people face.
Thanks, Minister. I really appreciate that answer. And I should say to anyone watching, Origin have put out a statement today with some suggestions and recommendations on the mental health sector, which we're working with in partnership with Origin and a number of other organisations. So please feel free to check that out. We did promise everyone we'd try and make all of these forums between 30 and 45 minutes. So I'm going to push on through some other questions. Minister, we had a very specific one from someone who registered around HECS repayments. And I love a very specific policy-related question. The person asked, have you considered resetting HECS repayment thresholds back to 2017 settings to take pressure off young people's personal budgets and cost of living increases? And for anyone watching or listening, the HECS repayment thresholds are all about at what point you have to start paying back your HECS loan based on your income. So over to you, Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. So directly for the person that asked the question, you're right, it was previously over 50,000. In the 22-23 financial year, it's 48,361. So once you're earning that amount, you have to start repaying your HECS. To be honest, we did lower it. So obviously we lowered it from in that 50+ thousand down to that 48,000 range. It hasn't been looked at reducing that at the moment, just to give a straight answer, because I don't like to beat around the bush. But look, what I would say is that we are reducing the price of university fees in many areas in high demand as well. So a good example is an early childhood teaching qualification. We've seen that price in HECS go down by more than 40% under the coalition government, under the Liberal National government, and enrolments have gone up by 18.7%. And in an engineering qualification, if we've got any engineers watching tonight, but it went down, the cost of that, by 20% under the Liberal National government, and enrolments have increased by more than 9%, because we were trying to get people that go to uni to enrol in courses that basically they've got a great chance of getting a job when they finish. And so that's why we're really lowering the amount of HECS there. But for your question, next financial year, it's still set at 48,361.
Thanks, Minister. We've got a few people in the chat that would probably like to have a meeting post-election and
okay.
chat about
look, I'm committed to that, Luke. If I'm back and I've got this role, I'm committed to that, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd probably support that one and a change, but that's just me with a very big HECS debt.
Okay.
Our next question comes from the team at Think Forward, who are a member of AYAC, and they obviously focus on intergenerational equity. And one of their asks at the moment is around parliamentary inquiry into intergenerational fairness. If you do win government, will you and your party support an inquiry into intergenerational fairness as proposed by Think Forward?
Yeah, look, I mean, I had a look at what Think Forward was saying, and obviously we released our Australia's Youth Policy Framework in August 2021, following extensive consultations with young people. And the framework identifies the challenges that young people face and services available throughout it. And the 5 objectives, I sort of think, come into what they're talking about. So it's to acknowledge the impact of COVID, to capture the voice of young people on policies, to listen and respond to young people on the issues that matter to them, to outline the services and programs available, and to continue the journey. And so that's what we're committed to doing. So we wouldn't hold an inquiry, but what we would do is make sure that young people, are included in all our policy directions. That's what we want. We want to hear directly from them. And as I said to you before, Luke, we do have a good interaction with sort of 15 to 18-year-olds, and then over 18 to 25, that's where it gets a bit harder, particularly when people finish school. But in relation to intergenerational differences there, I mean, it's not something that we'd hold an inquiry into. We just think that we need to educate young people about financial literacy, everything that is available to them, and just keep encouraging them in this space. But we'd rather talk directly, like I did with myself as assistant minister, directly talk with you to get the outcomes that you need and change policy that way. We're not big into red tape and inquiries.
Thanks, Minister. I've got a feeling that the team at Think Forward will probably be banging on your door in the next part. We'll be pushing you to do that. So maybe we'll continue that discussion and we'll organise that meeting. But I'll hand over to Sarah.
Thanks, Luke. And Luke, speaking of changing policy, you might be aware that young people under the age of 18 aren't actually allowed to vote in their own interests. So how do we get the wider community and politicians to care about the issues that matter to young people and to vote in their interests?
Well, look, we want, we want young people to be supported and engaged in the political framework. I mean, you can join a political party at a younger age. With the Liberal National Party at 16 years of age, I've got many volunteers that help me on election day that are under 18, even though they can't yet vote. But it does shape their opinion. And I would just encourage people to get involved. Contact your local MP, contact your local senator. The issue is that with people, not everyone is engaging. Like, I try to be as engaging as I can with young people, and to give them support and to listen to what they're saying, and to be involved in my campaign, for example, that's happening at the moment. But every MP and senator is different. So I'd say to people under the 18, I thank you for your contribution. It's really important. And I often do that when I speak in schools in particular, because those people under the age of 18, we're very engaged with, because we're in the schools quite regularly. We're in the primary schools, we're in the high schools. And as you know, half the students in year 12 turn 18 throughout year 12. Where we lose track of young people, Bart, is when they finish year 12, because if you're like me and you don't have a university in your own electorate, mine's in the neighbouring electorate and it's only been there 5 years, I can't go down to the local uni to catch up with them. You know, myself with kids and a dog to walk, I'm not night clubbing anymore. So where do I meet young people when they leave school? That's always been the issue for me. Where I do meet them is at the sporting club, if they're into sport, or perhaps at an arts centre or at a music facility. But it is difficult. So I think what we're going to continue to try and focus on is meeting those people once they're over 18. But for those people under 18, I feel that I do listen to them and represent them well, at least in my own electorate, when they write or when I talk to them.
If you are actively engaged with people under the age of 18, do you support lowering the voting age to 16?
I don't think, well, I won't talk about me personally, but the party policy is no, it's 18. I mean, it would open it to all sorts of things if you're voting when you're at school, right? Like, what if someone says, hey, let's move to a 4-day school week? That'd be cool. Yeah, okay. No, we're probably going to stick to 5 days at school, okay? So I don't, but what I would say is that, I do listen to young people regularly. I actually had a young lady walk up to me on a booth yesterday who voted for me, and I didn't recognise her because I knew her. She said to me, when you were in grade 8, I wrote a letter to you and you responded with the nicest answer that I've ever received. And this was 5 years ago, and I guess that's why she chose to vote for me. So I thanked her for that. I had another young lady today who was a school captain at Bounty Boulevard State School in my electorate in North Lakes. And she was then the school captain at her high school. I won't say which high school, just not to identify her. But she was really glad to see me today as well. And so MPs and senators can have a big impact on young people when they're at school. So look, I think 18 is okay. And we'll keep listening. And it is our job to represent everyone, including children as well. So we'll keep doing our best.
Thanks, Minister. And I think there might be a few meetings on that one as well, and a few 16 to 18-year-olds that want to meet on that topic. Okay. I promised everyone we would wrap up at 7:45. So one final question. What do you say, given your pitch to young people heading to the polls on Saturday, what's the final thing you say to them before they go into the booth?
Well, look, my final pitch is we want to thank you for your contribution to Australia. Young people are extremely important, and I remember what it was like to be young as well. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for contribution. You do have a positive future in Australia, whether it's on mental health, climate change, employment or education. Australia will be a leader in these spaces around the world, and I want to talk to all young people and say you've got a positive future. Keep the economy strong. Vote Liberal and National this weekend, because with a strong economy, we all have a stronger future. It enables us to fund the Defence Force. It enables us to fund Medicare and the pharmaceutical benefit schemes. It enables us to fund the NDIS. It enables us to fund universities, schools, hospitals, the environment, everything else that we do there. I've got a bit of an interest in freshwater ecosystems and reptiles and fish, and we do a lot of work in that space. It enables us to do our recycling schemes, to invest in manufacturing through our manufacturing grants. So I'd say to young people, if you want a positive future, you'll hear it from me and you'll hear it from the Liberal National Party. I'd ask you to vote Liberal National this weekend. The world is in a difficult time at the moment and we need the Morrison government back. We won't let you down. And as the Federal Assistant Minister for Youth and Employment Services, I'll continue to help people find work through our job fairs, and I'll keep working hard for you.
Thanks, Minister. I think a lot of people appreciate hearing that pitch before they make their decision later this week. But thank you again for coming. Thank you for the support. We really appreciate it. And I think it's a really important part of election time to run these events and to make sure people can hear from everyone. Thank you to everyone for attending. I really appreciate the support. If you didn't already know, we ran a session with the Greens last week on Thursday, and we'll be running a final session with the Australian Labor Party this Wednesday at 6:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Final few things, you can join AYAC if you'd like to know more about future events, both before and after the election. There'll be a link in the chat that you can click now. And we'd also love if you can share some feedback with us about this event and about the other events. So please feel free to follow the link there. Otherwise, thank you so much. We hope you have an amazing week and good luck on voting day. And thanks again, Sarah and Minister.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Sarah.
See ya.